What's up, guys? In today's video, we're going to be talking about the biggest myths and misunderstandings within the restoration industry. And I've got news for you. There's a ton of them out there. Some of these things you probably already got an idea on. Other stuff you may not. I'm going to be giving you a contrarian view about a bunch of stuff that a bunch of people like you are probably doing that you don't need to be doing. If you own a restoration company and you're tired of working harder instead of smarter, you don't want to miss this video. Let's go. All right, guys, as we get started, do me a favor, hit the like and subscribe button, drop a comment, and let me know where you guys are tuning in from. Now, I want to say this first and foremost as we jump in. The purpose of this video is to just provide you a contrarian view, to show you a different angle, to show you a different light about stuff that we always accept is true within the restoration industry. So I don't want you to think that I'm necessarily trying to be argumentative with adjusters or argumentative with people within the industry, but what I want you to do is think differently about things. Learn to start thinking for yourself. I'll just take a step back when you hear some of this stuff and maybe take it with a grain of salt, but just understand some of the stuff is tongue in cheek, some of it I'm kind of picking at it, but for the most part, there's gonna be stuff in here that is going to make sense to you and you should find it valuable and hopefully entertaining. So here we go. So here are some of the biggest myths and misunderstandings in the restoration industry. You have to sketch a water damage project. Really? Says who? We never sketch our water mitigation projects. Why are you sketching it? Who told you you had to sketch it? I mean, yes, probably the adjuster, right? They probably also told you got to use Xactimate too. Wrong. Why would you need to sketch it? So let's say hypothetically that you are going to be turning in a mitigation invoice or an estimate. One reason they might say you need to sketch it is for billing, right? We need to know the dimensions of the room. Well, do you really need to know the dimensions of the room? What if we're billing this not in unit pricing, but in time and material? If we're doing time and material, it doesn't matter how many square feet we did it on. We're doing it on time and material. That's one piece of evidence. The other one is, even if you do need the dimensions for a unit price, you still don't need a sketch, okay? If it was a 600 square foot of water removal, does it really matter if it was a square or if it was a rectangle? No, it's still 600 square feet. The reality is this: you do not need to sketch anything for a water mitigation project. So another myth is that you have to use Xactimate. That's bullcrap too. Who said you have to use Xactimate? Where did you see that? Nobody's policy says it has to use Xactimate. Heck, for that matter, there's another competitor, Symbility, other than Xactimate, and there's a ton of adjusters that will use Symbility instead of Xactimate. Not only that, but on large commercial losses, it's more widely accepted for you to use time and material than it is to use Xactimate. And I can promise you this, there's plenty of examples or cases when you get on a really large commercial loss that they're not gonna want an Xactimate because it winds up being too expensive. You see, Xactimate works well for them in certain cases, all right, in residential projects, but on some jobs, if you write it, it can be super expensive. That's the reason why the adjusters go back and forth between allowing you to pay for unit pricing or time and materials. They talk out of both sides of their mouth. Which one do they want to use? Whichever one is cheaper. Guys, you could write an invoice using Xactimate or not using Xactimate, time, material, or unit pricing. There's many different ways that you could write an invoice, and that's still not the problem. You don't have to use Xactimate. You don't have to do anything that anybody tells you that you have to do. The primary reason why most people use Xactimate is because somebody told you that you need to use Xactimate, or it will help you to get paid, or that it's all about documentation. Oh yeah, that's what they tell you. But then after a while, it goes from documentation, then they don't want to pay you the line items that they told you they're going to pay you when you use Xactimate. So there was this big lie that if you just use Xactimate and you're transparent in your billing and transparent in your pricing, and we have good, clear documentation, we're going to pay you. Well, that turned out to be false too. So what do you say now when they want to argue about monitoring hours? What do you want to say when they start saying we don't pay for that, or that's just cost of doing business? Even though Xactimate clearly says that you can use overhead and profit on your water mitigation, the carriers don't want to do it. Why? Because it's all a bunch of bullcrap. You ain't got to use Xactimate. Do it if you want to, but it's a freaking myth that you do. Another myth in the restoration industry is that you have to use a moisture map. Really? Says who? Who told you that you have to use a moisture map? Let me ask you a question. What is the goal on a water damage restoration project? It's wet. You want to get it dry. That's it. Remember why you're at the project: to dry the property, not to document things. You're not there to build a big report. And so for that matter, even if you did use a moisture map, that should be done for internal communications. Does that make sense? You guys create the map so you can dry the property better. It's not that you need that to justify drying it. Pictures and showing a wet reading, that is all the justification that you need to dry the dadgum property. Do you see a doctor go and sharing his notes to another doctor or to a nurse? And do you see him sending that to an adjuster? No, it'd be violating HIPAA laws and regulations. The reality is this: if you use a moisture moisture map, it should be done for internal purposes. And the only reason why you would is to aid yourself and your team in drying the property. You do not have to use a moisture map. And for that matter, no, you don't need a moisture mapping software either. And I think this brings me to the next point of the S500. A lot of people might say, well, it's because the S500 said we have to use a moisture map. That's not even true either, which this brings me to my next myth. The S500 is the end-all be-all. Wrong. The S500 is a guide. It is not the Bible. It does not understand the specifics to your job. You do. Each job is going to be different. It is simply a guideline, a set of best practices on what you should do in generic situations. But the reality is, there's no such thing as a generic situation. Everyone's going to be different, and for that reason, every job that you mitigate will be slightly different as well. Your goal is to drive the structure, not to blindly follow the S500. The S500 even tells you that you have executive order, like you have executive judgment over the S500. It relies on you and your professional opinion to apply your knowledge. So even when you think about it, the S500, it gets updated. It wasn't perfect back then, it's not perfect now, and it won't be perfect in the future. For that matter, the insurance companies even pick and choose on when they want to follow it. The adjusters will cite the S500 when it benefits them, but they're going to ignore it when it comes to paying your bill. Here's the deal. The S500 is best practices. It's more used in the beginning for your initial training, okay? Just like when a doctor goes to med school, they probably do a lot of study work in the beginning, right? But after that, once they get out on the field becomes their learning playground, all right? You don't see a doctor stop what he's doing in the operating room and go refer to a handbook to see what he needs to do, right? Same thing with the S500. In the beginning, I did carry it with me. I'm not saying don't use it. I'm not saying don't refer it, okay? But I'm saying you're going to read it and you're going to apply what it says on top of what you see there in the field. That thing is not telling you how to mitigate that job. It's giving you best practices, and then you need to set the best practices on top of that job, and then you apply your judgment to that. The S500 is not the end-all be-all. It's the starting point. It's the beginning, not the end. And this brings me to another thing. I don't know if this is a myth, but this is a misunderstanding for sure. Flood cuts. What are y'all doing with what's up with all the flood cuts? You guys are out there flood cutting stuff for what reason? If it ain't Cat 3, you should be drying it, not cutting the freaking drywall. Who told you you're supposed to be doing flood cuts? When you do flood cuts, you're simply doing more work and getting paid less money. Yeah, you charge more for the demolition, but you got labor in that. Leave the freaking drywall there and dry it. Let the machines do the work. Stop tearing out what you can dry unless you have to. For real, chill with the flood cuts. So another myth in the restoration industry is this, that your job as a restoration contractor is to mitigate and try and keep the cost down on a restoration project. Like, that's not at all what you're there to do. You are there to mitigate the structure against secondary damage. That's it. Mitigate against secondary damage. That has nothing to do with cost. Heck, if we were trying to do that with cost, you'd have to stop what you're doing and pull a freaking ITIL report every 5 minutes before you decided, was it cheaper to restore this or to clean it, or what are you there to do? I mean, your freaking technicians will have to be walking around with calculators. They can't do that. They are first aid responders for that property. Has nothing to do with cost. Here's the thing you got to ask yourself. Is it wet? Yes. Get it dry. Does it need to come out? I don't know. It depends on the job you're talking about. But if it's wet and it needs to come out, it's wet and it needs to come out. That's it. I don't care how much it costs. Do not sit there and make decisions based on what's cheaper for somebody. You don't even know if it's going to be a covered loss. Here's another myth in the restoration industry, that you need to get approval from an adjuster. You don't need approval from an adjuster for anything. If it's wet, get it dry. Simple as that. If it needs to come out, take it out. If you need to do a pack out, do a pack out. If laminate floors go underneath the cabinets and you've got subfloor there and water's on the laminate floors, bye-bye cabinets, bye-bye countertops. You don't need to go call the adjuster to ask them if you have permission to do your job. Your job is to mitigate, not to seek permission from an adjuster. Are we clear? Are you seeing what I'm saying? People get lost in this. Do you see doctors in the emergency room stop what they're doing and go rush over to Blue Cross Blue Shield, call them up and be like, hey, yeah, I got John Doe down here. Do you care if we do some x-rays? I think he's probably got a broken leg. I just want to check and see if he's got coverage. Is that cool? No, who in the world would ever do that? So why would you do that? You shouldn't, so don't. Stop. The reality is this, you do not need approval from an adjuster to do your job. This is your project. That's like their operating room. There's no adjusters in the emergency room. Do you understand? You don't see adjusters in the emergency room. Don't let them on your job sites. Do the work that you need to do, and when you get done, hand them the bill. And here's another myth in the restoration industry, that you have to, or you should, detach and reset or reuse damaged materials. Says who? Cabinets were not meant to be taken down and put back together. Countertops were not meant to be taken down and put back together. For that matter, whenever we pull out the cabinets and we've got the countertops, we literally take hammers to the countertops. Now, we didn't always do this. In the beginning, I was one of the idiots, okay? I would actually pull out the base cabinet and I would like prop up the countertop with these 2x4s, right? Well, that was like one of the dumbest things you could possibly do. Why did I do that? Because I was trying to save the carrier some money so they didn't break their countertop. What I really did was this. I created a super hazardous situation in that kitchen, okay? All it takes is a 150 or 60 pound dog to go running by, kick one of the legs out from underneath that countertop, and then the countertop falls and cuts off your freaking customer's toe because they're barefooted in their kitchen. Like, don't do that. And these were the things that I was doing. You understand? Like, and that was all based about trying to save money and trying to detach or reset stuff. Like, if you tear out a shower, okay? Like, we did not reuse the shower glass, okay? That's almost like trying to tear all of the freaking, that's like trying to tear all the crap off the tile and glue the tile back together. You wouldn't do that. So we don't pull nails out of shoe mold. And if you do pull nails out of shoe mold, I hope you're charging like 150 bucks an hour to go put them up and put them back together. Your job is to get the thing from wet to dry. You understand? It's not to babysit and try and salvage baseboards. You are not a baseboard Jesus. Another myth is that you have to actually go by the linear footage of what's in the room. We did not. If we had a room that was 12 by 14, when we ordered the trim or we ordered the crown or we ordered the shoe mold, they got 4 16-foot sticks. Why? Number one, because they don't sell it by the linear foot. They sell it by the stick. So we're going to get 4 16-foot sticks. And number two, if it didn't have joints in it when originally, then it doesn't need to have joints in there now. Like, make it one long piece. Measure twice, cut once. 16-foot stick, cut down to 12 by 12 or 14 by 14. You don't have to freaking go by the linear foot. Again, I'm not trying to get you guys into a fight with a carrier, but I'm trying to show you different ways to think about this stuff. Does that make sense? And let's go back to the cabinet thing real quick. I forgot to tell you guys about this. Like, cabinet companies, they use these things called pocket screws. And pocket screws will be put in at weird angles on the cabinet, like not on the face. So like, more than likely, you're going to wind up damaging or breaking these things. And if you try to position yourself like you're going to salvage it and then you scratch it going out the door, guess whose fault that is? They're going to charge you, homie, for scratching the freaking thing. You understand? While you're carrying it. Like, you were doing them a favor and they're going to say, no, that one's on you. Ask me how I know. Don't do it, guys. And I'm not saying you can't detach. I'm not saying you can't reset, but you would only do it when you want and when you need to do it, not because you have to do it. All right, and here's another myth, that you actually have to produce some type of report to give to the insurance company. Really? Says who? Here's what our report was. We gave them an invoice, literally, and the invoice said everything that we did, and it should read like a story, okay? We teach the muddy scope. You need to have a story-based estimate or a story-based invoice that makes sense, that your customer can understand and that the adjuster can understand. You don't need a 38-page report. You can go get Encircle if you want. I don't really care. And that's the next thing. You don't need a 38-page report with 500 photos trying to justify and document every single thing you did. Dog, the devil is in the details. You go turn all that stuff in, now they've got a reason to want to go through it for 6 weeks because you gave them 498,363 bits of metadata, whatever that is. And you're just giving them too much, okay? This is not Aaron Brockovich where you're trying to overwhelm the defense attorneys. You understand? Something simple, something clean. We turned in a 1-page or 2-page invoice with a link to maybe some photo in company cam, a series of photos, under 8 photos, something that showed the house, something wet, something dry. That's it, guys. That's all that you need. You don't need a software. You don't need a 500-page report, okay? And if we talk about moisture logs, like, even if we did use an Excel spreadsheet, but you literally don't have to send them that. You can just take a picture, a screenshot of it, take it, write it down by hand. You're not obligated to do any of these things. Does that make sense? Look, and here's the deal. As we wrap this up for a landing. I'm not trying to be difficult, but what I do get sick of is seeing and hearing people struggle getting paid because they get told to them that they have to do something this way or they have to do something that way, and it's simply not true, okay? I want you guys to be able to work with the carriers. I want you to be able to be cordial with the adjuster if it needs to be. You don't even have to talk to adjusters. That's the next thing. You really don't have to talk to adjusters, but I'll make a different video for that. No, I'll talk about that right now. Why do you need to talk to the adjuster? Why? Like, the job is already already done. The hay is in the barn, bro. You do not have to talk to an adjuster. And when the adjuster calls and they got a problem, we would run the calls to our front office at the girl because the hay was in the barn. What problems or questions do you have? Because all they're going to be talking about the invoice at that point is the bill. And we authorize her to take off a percentage, no more, if she's got a problem. But if it doesn't fall within the percentage that we have allocated at our company, there's no reason to talk to me. There's no reason to talk to a project manager. There's no reason to talk to a technician. You don't need to do that stuff. You know what? Here's bonus track. I didn't have this one in there. Here's another myth. You have to use a plumber report. Really, says who? Whoever said there was ever even a plumber brought to the job? Guys, when you do your mitigation, you should mitigate before you call a plumber. When you call the plumber out there, you're asking for problems. You're asking for the adjuster. That's like the adjuster is going to go call the plumber, ask them a series of front-end loaded questions that the plumber doesn't know and understand, and they're going to use whatever that report is damning against the insured. You're going to screw your customer by issuing a plumbing report. Like, who said there was a plumber? Nobody. You don't need a plumber. The plumber's not Inspector Gadget. You not Inspector Gadget. The adjuster is not the Inspector Gadget, okay? None of that matters. I will tell you this. You can get around plumbing reports and don't ever do it. And if you did send a plumbing report, you should treat it just like they were an expert witness, right? Just like you were going to court. And you know what they do with expert witnesses? They only use witnesses they know that are going to produce the findings that they seek, and they're probably going to compensate them to do so. So you might want to do that with your plumber, dog. You might want to make sure that you have an expert witness, okay? You don't need a plumber's report. All right, look. That's it. Y'all got me fired up here. Hopefully that's helpful. And look, we'll just leave that there. If you want me to help you grow your company, you want more about this, know more about these things, go to workwithshane.com. We'll hop on a 15-minute call. See you guys in the next video. If you guys enjoyed that video, I've got 3 things for you. First off, there's a couple of other videos somewhere on the screen. You can click those now to go watch more content about growing your restoration company. Number 2, if you haven't already subscribed, click my face below and that will subscribe you to the channel. And finally, if you would like for me to help you grow your restoration company, go to workwithshane.com, put in your information, and let's get on a 15-minute call. We'll see you then.